Now the last thing I want to talk about in this section is this concept of stitching. So you might have noticed here, there's a stitch. I don't know if you looked at that. Here, let me zoom in on that. You might be able to see it a little better. There's a stitch right here. You can see where it has stitched these two pieces of media together. I did a cut in here, but yet this moves as one object, one clip. So let me show you that again. If I go in here and I do a split, for example, and I want to split all of these, I can select them all. I can do a split, and then I look at all of these. They're all separate clips. So let me undo those last couple of changes. Instead, what I did was I highlighted a section and I did a cut. And when I did the cut, it kept everything stitched together. So this is something called auto-stitching. And so what it does for you is it says, well, when you make a cut, you probably want this to be all one piece of media. And so for a lot of people, they do choose to do that. They say, hey, you know what? It makes sense. This is one video file. I'm cutting it up into pieces, yes, but for the most part, this section here, I want to keep it all together. I don't want it to be broken up into several smaller pieces. Well, for me, that's not necessarily what I want to do. And so I can change this stitching. I can turn this auto stitching off, and I can stitch manually if I want to. So to do that, I'll go up to Edit and then down to Preferences. And here in Edit Preferences, I see there's this option to enable auto stitching. So what I choose to do is I deselect that, I uncheck that, and I click OK. So now when I zoom back in here and I say I want to make a cut here, I'll cut this out, cut. I see that it keeps these as separate clips. Now, if I decided, oh, you know what, I would like these two to be stitched together, I can do that. I can select those two, and I can right-click, and at the top it says Stitch Selected Media, or Control-Alt-I. And I can do that, and now that is all one clip. But this item down here is a clip by itself, this is a clip by itself. If I wanted to connect these two, I can select both of these, I'll click on the one, and I'll hold down Shift and click on the other. And now I'll just do Control-Alt-I, and now that has been stitched together in the same place. Now it has to be the same media type. I couldn't zoom out of this and say, well, I have this video piece and this audio piece, and I'll put them right next to each other, and I want these two to be combined. So I right-click and I say, wait, I can't stitch. All right, well, I'll do it with the keyboard shortcut instead. Control-Alt-I. Oh, it's not working, right? Even if I go to Edit, I can see I can't stitch selected media because they're not the same media. You can't stitch these two together. I need to do it with media that's from the same file. Now you may have noticed that I can also unstitch. So if I needed this to be broken out into its pieces, I can select it, right-click, and choose to unstitch. And now this one track, the stitch is gone. It's now separated into those two pieces. If I need to bring it back, no problem. Highlight those two and stitch selected media. So stitching together makes sense when you have something like this, where you have a video and you've just edited out the parts you don't want. Now you can move it up and around or wherever you want as a single entity, rather than if this was multiple pieces, and then I would grab this and move it to where I would want, and then I could come back here and move this to where I want. All right, that's not ideal. I could grab them both and move them together, but I might have several different splits here, and if I wanted it all as one big one, I could do that. And in fact, here, I'll bring this all together, and I'm only talking about putting two of them together, but let's say I want to grab all four of these and join all of these, stitch all of these together. So right-click, Stitch Selected Media, and now I have one video file that I can move around. Okay, so that's what stitching is. Again, my preference is to not stitch it, but I know many people that I work with who do prefer stitching, and so Camtasia enables it by default. You might want to keep the stitching on, but for me moving forward, you'll see that I will leave the auto stitching turned off, so that anytime I do cuts, it will create separate clips.